This is a small editorial from today's The Hindu, and it actually talks about very simple economy related aspects, dimensions. For example, how much is like retail inflation is increasing, and what are the roles and responsibilities of RBI in this emerging scenario, wherein the retail inflation is also fueled by supply chain bottlenecks from coming from like outside India. So you can read this article for sure. Some very good concepts are being given over here, and mostly basics, mostly static related concepts. But my objective here is to learn with the question and answer writing. So how does the present economic scenario illustrate the RBI's dilemma between containing inflation and supporting growth? So RBI has a dilemma. The dilemma is between how to contain inflation while supporting growth. So RBI thinks that it should decide its monetary policy should evolve in such a way that inflation should also remain under control and economic growth is also sustained. And this question is asking, how does the present scenario illustrate this? That means recently RBI is having some challenges, and the question is asking you to illustrate, to explain, to write how this is an evolving challenge for the RBI. So what would you write? So first thing, you will write an introduction. The important perspective of this session that I am conducting is that we will be learning how to write an answer while reading newspapers, because this is a daily this is a gradual practice, gradual improvement which will happen on a daily basis. So what would be an introduction? So introduction should set the tone and tenor of your question. It is like in one sentence you are defining or explaining each and everything that what you are going to write in the following answer, in the succeeding answer. So how we can write an introduction to it? Consider this way, that RBI's objective to control inflation while ensuring that economic growth momentum is not stalled. So does this sentence, in one sentence, one statement, does this sentence briefly presents the picture what is the challenges that RBI is facing these days? I think this is fair enough. If you have any concerns, you can let me know. Now, after giving this introduction, we should move to the core body of the answer. The question says present scenario. So obviously, you need to highlight the present scenario. So what is the present scenario? The present scenario is mentioned over here regarding inflation and the weak economic growth that is happening for the short term level. The first economic scenario is that retail inflation is above 4%. It is above 4%, 4% plus. Target of RBI. So you know that RBI has a target of 4% plus minus 2%. This is the target of RBI's monetary policy, to keep inflation within this range. But recently in July, inflation is slightly above 4% target, and it says that it is at 4.45%. So it is more than 4% a little bit. So it is a kind of cause of concern that if inflation keeps above this level and if it keeps rising gradually towards this 4 plus 2 is equal to 6% level, then that is a matter of concern for RBI. So this is one of the major present scenario. Another present scenario highlighted over here is an index called Purchasing Managers Index. That index implied a fall in economic momentum. economic momentum is falling, though at short term. So this PMI is short term. This is also written over here, like this PMI showing a sharp fall from this in June to this in July, weakest expansion since March 2022. It is a high frequency indicator and need not reflect a long-term trend. So it is not reflecting any long-term trend, but still it is a matter of concern, because even at the short-term level, it has declined. So these are the two basic present scenario. Now the dilemma for RBI is, what is the dilemma for RBI? The dilemma for RBI is, what RBI actually you need to understand. The first is that when inflation is going up, RBI usually increases the rates. When it increases the rates with expectation that liquidity will go down and it will lead to inflation going down. This is the broad concept you must be knowing. Now the dilemma with RBI is that if when liquidity goes down, when liquidity in the economy goes down, it actually leads to two scenarios. Let's understand this way. First scenario is, if liquidity goes down, it will lead to going down of cash in hand. Liquidity goes down means less money is available to the people and also business persons. So cash in hand is also going down. Now this cash in hand will have two implications. First implication here is that it will lead to inflation going down. That we understood over here. If people have less money to spend, then obviously the demand of goods and services is expected to be down, and that's why this will pull down the inflation. But the second scenario of this cash in hand going down is that it will lead to investment also going down, right? If business people are also having less income, less money in their hand, then obviously it will lead to poor, they will be having less money in their hands, so also they can they will not be having enough money to invest. And if they are not investing enough capital, then obviously the economic growth will also go down. So this is the dilemma of RBI, that if you increase the rates to control inflation, then the cash in hand will be down not only for the common people, but also for the business people. And if the business people are not having enough liquidity, they will not be able to invest much, and that's why the economic growth will also go down. Another dilemma for RBI is the imported inflation that has been discussed in this article. This imported inflation says that the fuel prices, the crude prices are going up because of the disturbance in the West Asia region. So that is not in the control of RBI. And supply side disruptions happening because of Russia-Ukraine war, that is also not in the hands of RBI. So this imported inflation is leading to the outcome that traditional tools that RBI has do not necessarily help control inflation. So if the inflation is due to imported, or if the inflation is due to factors related to out of control of RBI, like crude prices are rising, so that's why it will be imported inflation. So in that case, even if RBI keeps increasing the rates, it won't be effective much. So these are the three dilemmas of the RBI, and this you can highlight in this answer. After highlighting this, the question was how does, so we highlighted everything. So now we can simply conclude. How we can conclude? We can conclude by writing that holding the rates and looking for wider calibration of monetary policy committee with other aspects like managing volatility of rupee, managing forex. These are the other aspects of monetary policy, along with alignment with fiscal policy. Right. So if RBI actually wants to get out of this dilemma, or if RBI wants to balance this growth and inflation, then RBI needs to work in a wider perspective, like being in sync with the fiscal policy as well. So this was the core of this important article. Now we will move to our second article. That article is not strictly current affairs. It is actually a very brief explainer on arrest and detention, constitutional legal provisions regarding arrest and detention. But still I picked this article because it is loaded with some very good concepts, very good ideas, facts. So here it is mentioning some case laws as well. Some case laws is also mentioned over here. And then it very beautifully explains how Article 22, 21 and how this golden triangle is mentioned over, golden triangle of India's constitution, how these are related to personal liberty, and like how these can actually prevent arbitrary action by the state. So let's understand this with our question. So the question is, constitutional safeguards against arbitrary deprivation of personal liberty are central to the rule of law. First keyword is constitutional safeguard. That means you should be having good idea about what are the constitutional safeguards. That is the very important point. And how it is against the arbitrary deprivation of personal liberty. So you should be having good idea about personal liberty and how that personal liberty can be deprived arbitrarily by the state authorities. So how we can proceed this? Very simple. First of all, you should be writing an introduction. How to write an introduction? That introduction should briefly compile all the components of this question. State authorities, resorting to arrest and detention is often criticized for being arbitrary, that deprives personal liberty. You will need to learn this art of like how you are like writing more in a fewer words. That you will need to learn, and that will come with practice. So in this one statement, I tried to summarize or explain this entire question and summarize or like put up a picture, put up a preface what I am going to write in the answer below. This is the purpose of introduction. After writing this, we needed to highlight the constitutional safeguards. What are the constitutional safeguards related to personal liberty? First thing, Article 21, the right to life and personal liberty. This you know. Then Article 22, that deals with arrest and detention, preventive detention. And this Article 22 provides for procedural safeguards. है कि नहीं? This Article 22 provides for procedural safeguards. What are those procedural safeguards? You can give 1-2 examples. The first example being, inform the accused of grounds of detention, reason of arrest or ground of detention. Inform the accused. Why are you arresting him? Why are you detaining him? And procedure, produce him before magistrate within certain period like 24 hours. And now these are like different for preventive detention and for arrest. I am broadly talking in terms of arrest. So like it is the authorities are required to produce the accused in front of magistrate within 24 hours. So this way we briefly talked about the constitutional safeguard. We need to also write that this Article 22 is linked with Article 21, because these procedural safeguards actually ensure that the liberty of that person is ensured, that person is living freely and is staying very free life, and he is not functioning under any kind of pressure. Now, what is the issue of arbitrary action? That you need to explain, that you need to write, because the question is about examine. So you gave the constitutional safeguard, so you need to examine what is the issue of arbitrary action, how it is actually happening. So first thing is that not informing the reason of arrest. So arbitrary action will obviously mean that if there is some constitutional or legal provision, and if the authorities are not following that, then that will mean that the decision or action is arbitrary. Apne man se kuch kar liya, they are not following the rules. So this we will write. We should also write that false allegations, if the arrest is based on false allegation, that will lead to abuse of legal process, right? If we are not following the rules and we are like, someone has made an allegation, you are arresting that person based on that allegation, then obviously that will be an abuse of legal power, because you should be having a strong ground, a strong reason why to arrest that person. Then we should also write there will be damage of reputation. It will also lead to loss of life in terms of custodial deaths and livelihood. If you are arresting a person, detaining a person for frivolous reasons for say 2 or 3 or 4 days, or even for 1 day, don't you think that his livelihood will be threatened? He will not be on his livelihood. He will not be able to support his family. So these are the issues, concerns, whatever you want to say regarding arbitrary action. So in this question in this answer we highlighted constitutional safeguards, we highlighted the issue of arbitrary action which is leading to deprivation of personal liberty, and then we need to conclude that it is very important to be well versed in constitutional safeguards. Everyone should be well versed in constitutional safeguards, because this will reduce arbitrariness. This will reduce arbitrariness of state authorities. That is very important. You need to mention the term state authorities. And this arbitrariness can be checked, and in this you can also highlight, and in this the judiciary often plays a major role. This way you can conclude. So in this answer we examined that how this arbitrary action is like going against the constitutional safeguards, and we also gave a small indirect inferential based way forward in terms of judiciary role and being well versed in constitutional safeguards. So this leads to our completion of second question. Now we will move to our third question. The third topic is actually, again, like it is something which most of the people may ignore this article, feeling that this article is not that important. What will happen? This is very common to pilgrimage sites or religious sites getting polluted. This is very common. So, and not enough key terms are also given over here, but still there are something way forwards like how to improve this awareness and all. Understand this article, importance of this article through this question. So environmental concerns cannot be divorced from cultural and ethical values that shape human attitude towards nature. If you want to project environmental concerns, if you want to promote environmental concerns, then you need to have this recognition that cultural and ethical values will have to be fixed, because these cultural and ethical values actually shape the human attitudes. So this is like something you can expect, because UPSC won't ask you questions like giving this Kanwar Yatra, or like asking about the questions regarding Haridwar and all. UPSC won't ask that. UPSC will ask indirect, inference based questions. So how to approach this question? Very simple. First we will write an introduction. What to write in an introduction? Values inculcated through beliefs and practices often shape the nature and surrounding of our inhabitation, right? So whatever values we are inculcating through our beliefs and practices, those values actually shape how we treat the nature and surrounding of the places we are living. Now we need to highlight the importance of values, because we said that values are important in the introduction. We need to highlight how the values are important. Very first, respect for nature. For example, you give example of rivers, and it leads to reverence and worship. We value the rivers, we worship the rivers, because we are looking with the reverence to rivers. That is our value. It is a different thing that this value is like being taken in a different way these days, and we are like polluting rivers. But the original idea is to respect and worship the rivers. Then the second one is value of compassion and empathy. Value of compassion and empathy about who? About the sanitation workers, about the people, about our neighborhood. If we have this kind of compassion and empathy towards our neighborhood and to the sanitation workers, we will avoid littering. We will avoid littering. For example, this is not just about this religious tourism and all. This is about even while you are staying in your home, and you are just like cleaning your home, और अपने घर से कचरा निकाल के you are putting up everything on the road. So you are littering the ground, you are cleaning your home, but it is creating nuisance for your neighbors, for the neighborhood. So if we are having this compassion and empathy for the neighborhood, for this sanitation workers, then we will avoid littering. This you can give, and this is like very real world example as well. You can also write about concern for humanity. How this is important? We should not take any action that causes hatred or social tension, because this article highlights that some anti-social elements have infiltrated there, and they have like specifically created some nuisance at the changing rooms, which are meant for the female devotees. So it is, if we have the concern for humanity, we will not indulge in any action that may cause hatred or social tension. So these are something importance of values. This we can highlight, and all these are entirely based on this article. Now we will write how like failure in values impact. So if there is failure in values, then what will happen? First, we can write that there will be lack of responsible living. If our values fail, then we will not be living responsibly. We will litter. We will throw plastic bottles, chips packets here and there, and we will think that it is the job of sanitation workers to clean. हमारा काम थोड़े है, उन्हें तो पैसे मिल रहे हैं, they will clean, because most of us we do act like this. हमारा काम नहीं है, उनका काम है, वो साफ करेंगे. हम गए घूमे, प्लास्टिक बॉटल फेंका है. That is lack of responsibility. Poor civic sense. How poor civic sense? We will litter while leaving or avoid using public convenience. We are traveling, we are going with car, we are हाथ खिड़की से बाहर निकाला and like we threw the bottle or the wrappers out, or we will avoid public conveniences. उतनी दूर कौन जाएगा वॉशरूम यूज करने? Let's like excrete here only. So this is poor civic sense. It is also about disrespect towards women, and this is very common in places where this religious congregation type things happen, because some antisocial elements actually they intentionally try to create a discomfort. मजा आता है लोगों को करने में, परेशान करने में, तंग करने में मजा आता है. So these are something concerns which may happen. These are the outcome when our values fail. So that's why it is like the cultural and ethical values, they shape human attitude towards nature. And here nature is not just about environment. That we will write in our conclusion, that conserving nature is not merely about environmental conservation. It is also about entire surrounding, which includes human, living and non-living being. So it is not just about our environmental conservation कि हमें सिर्फ नदियों को बचाना है, पहाड़ों को बचाना है. You should, our ethical values, our cultural values, our code of conduct should also think about the entire surrounding. अपने neighborhood के बारे में सोचिए, अपने आसपास के लोगों के बारे में सोचिए. If you will think that way, then only that will mean the actual functioning, proper leverage of these ethical values. So these were the 3 articles from today's The Hindu, and I tried to explain how to analyze those articles from your answer writing.